Today, we'll look at two horrifying caving stories that went terribly wrong. In the first story, a professional caving team of 10 will deliver one of their friends to the cave's nightmare. In the second, we'll witness the life or death struggle of 3 people in a bat-infested cave. High in Slovenia's lush, forest-clad hills, deep within ancient limestone, lies Postojna Cave. Stretching 24 kilometers, this subterranean wonder captivates explorers with its ornate chambers, while its glistening stalactites, like frozen tears, seem to pay homage to past calamities. On July 3, 1993, 32-year-old Luka Novak stood at the cave's entrance, his breath visible in the cool morning air. A graphic designer from Ljubljana, Luka was no seasoned explorer, but his heart pulsed with a longing for adventure. He sought escape from the monotony of city life, though his experience was limited to a single weekend caving course months earlier. Luka had always been drawn to the unknown. Stories of Postojna's labyrinthine beauty, its dripping caverns, echoing tunnels, and hidden rivers, had enchanted him since childhood. When he saw a brochure for a commercial caving tour, promising a beginner-friendly descent, he couldn't resist. The tour's centerpiece, a 160-foot vertical shaft, was marketed as thrilling yet safe. Luka's pulse quickened at the thought, a mix of excitement and unease. He imagined himself exploring the cave's chambers and mazes. His training was rusty, his skills untested, but the allure of adventure drowned out his doubts. He began preparations, packing his bag, checking his headlamp, rope, and carabiner, and set off to join the group, unaware he was stepping into a trap set by his own inexperience. The tour group, led by experienced guide Mateo Klein, consisted of 9 adventure enthusiasts. Mate's easy smile and brisk instructions reassured everyone as they gathered at the cave's entrance. Adjusting his harness, Luka found the straps slightly loose. The descender, a metal device for controlling the rope, felt old and cold, its edges worn from use. He hesitated, his fingers tracing the device's surface. Something feels off, he thought, but Mate's voice cut through his concern. "You're ready, Luka. Just follow me," the guide said, clapping his shoulder. Luka nodded, swallowing his fear. He didn't want to seem weak in front of strangers. The cave's mouth loomed before them, a toothed gateway to a world where light was alien. As they stepped inside, the air grew colder, heavy with the scent of wet limestone. Headlamps cast faint beams, barely piercing the oppressive darkness. The group moved slowly, their footsteps echoing off walls that seemed alive. Luka's heart raced. The ceiling grazed his helmet, the floor slick beneath his boots. The cave was alive with whispers, distant drips, faint rustles, as if warning them to turn back. But Luka pressed on, driven by a mix of curiosity and pride. They reached the shaft, a 160-foot drop into a pitch-black abyss. The group paused, headlamps illuminating the rope, a lifeline dangling into the void. Mateo explained the descent with calm authority. "Clip in, check your gear, and go slow." Luka's hands trembled as he attached his descender to the rope. The device felt slippery, its grip on the rope weaker than expected. He glanced at Mateo, who was busy adjusting another tourist's harness. Doubt stirred in his chest, but he pushed it aside. "Just nerves," he told himself. "I've done this before." Taking a deep breath, he began his descent. Are you safe in your cozy bed? Would you choose the comfort of home or the thrill of cave exploration, like Luka? Share in the comments. The rope swayed under his weight. The first few feet were manageable, but the limestone walls scraped his boots, their jagged edges glinting in his headlamp's light. The air grew colder, the darkness thicker, as if the cave were swallowing him whole. Luka's grip on the rope tightened, his knuckles white. Then the descender slipped, an inch, then 2. His stomach lurched. He was sliding faster than intended. Panic gripped him. He fumbled with the device, twisting his arms, but the worn metal refused to hold the rope. Fear surged, cold and sharp, racing through his veins. The walls closed in, the darkness pressing against his chest. 80 feet down, he struggled alone, with 80 feet still to go. His mind screamed to call for help, but his voice caught in his throat. The group above was a blurry shadow, their headlamps faint specks in the abyss. He could hear Mateo's muffled instructions, too distant to notice his plight. "I can handle this," Luca whispered, his voice trembling. He adjusted his grip, praying the device would hold, but it was failing. The rope whistled through the device. His descent was now a barely controlled slide. His headlamp flickered, casting dancing shadows like ghosts on the walls. The cave's silence was suffocating, broken only by faint drips from below. At 120 feet, the descender gave out entirely. Luca plummeted in a sickening free fall, his scream echoing through the shaft, swallowed by the darkness. The rope passed uselessly through the device, offering no resistance. His body twisted in the air, his headlamp catching the limestone rushing past. He hit the cave floor 160 feet below, the impact shattering his skull, fracturing 2 vertebrae in his neck, and splintering his ankle. Pain exploded, a white-hot agony drowning the world. A lucid corner of his mind was flooded with regret, whispering, "I shouldn't have come." Blood pooled beneath his broken body, warm against the frozen limestone, his headlamp shattered and useless beside him. Above, the group froze. Mateo's shouts echoed, raw and desperate. "Luca! Can you hear me?" No response came, only the cave's indifferent silence. Mateo descended, his headlamp slicing through the darkness. When he saw Luca, the sight was horrific. Blood matted his hair, limbs twisted unnaturally, breath shallow and erratic. Mateo radioed for help, his voice cracking with panic. The Postojna cave rescue team, led by seasoned caver Anna Horvat, was summoned. The real challenge now began. Reaching Luca was a nightmare. The shaft's narrow spiral staircase, carved into the rock, was the only path, and every second was critical. The rescue operation was a race against time. Anna's team descended the stairs, their headlamps swaying like fireflies in the dark. The cave's walls closed in, cold and unyielding, as they navigated the treacherous path. When they reached Luca, he was barely conscious, his face pale, eyes half open. His broken headlamp lay beside him, a useless relic. The team worked with precision, securing his broken body to a stretcher, their movements careful to avoid further injury. The cold threatened hypothermia as Luca's breaths grew weaker. The ascent was grueling, the stretcher swaying on the spiral steps, the cave's silence mocking their efforts. Hours later, they emerged into the night. A helicopter waited, its blades slicing the air, its lights a beacon of hope. Luca was airlifted to Ljubljana University Medical Center, where doctors fought to save him. Miraculously, his spinal cord was intact, but the damage was catastrophic. A fractured skull requiring emergency surgery, 2 broken vertebrae threatening paralysis, and a shattered ankle. Luca survived, but recovery would be a long, painful journey. Have you ever faced a moment where preparation could have changed everything? The subsequent investigation was a sobering reckoning. Luca's inexperience was a ticking time bomb. His hesitation to voice his fears, a fatal mistake. The descender, later examined, was worn beyond safe use, a relic of the tour company's negligence. The 160-foot shaft, marketed as accessible, was deemed too dangerous for novices. The tour operator had cut corners, prioritizing profit over safety, failing to screen participants or maintain equipment. The findings shook Slovenia's caving community, leading to stricter regulations and a renewed focus on preparation. Luca's story could have ended differently with proper equipment, training, or a single call for help. Postojna Cave remains a testament to nature's dual nature, breathtakingly beautiful, yet brutally unforgiving. Luca's story is a chilling reminder that adventure demands respect. The cave cared nothing for his dreams or courage. It was a cold, uncompromising force, indifferent to human ambition. Preparation is more than gear. It's knowledge, humility, and the courage to admit when you're in over your head. Luca learned this the hard way, staring at a hospital ceiling, far from the cave's darkness. This tragedy leaves us with a question. How far would you go for adventure? And what would you risk? Postojna's tunnels still beckon, their beauty a siren's call to the bold. But Luca's story urges us to listen to another voice, the whisper of caution. Nature is a paradox, both magnificent and merciless. Always be prepared. Share Luca's story with someone who needs to hear it. Knowledge can save lives. The next story shows that being in the wrong place at the wrong time can cost you your life. A small lapse in timing can cost you everything. On September 12, 2021, in Carlsbad Caverns, New Mexico, the desert heat cooled into evening. 3 cavers, Sereth, Kael, and Melith, set out to map a passage. A faint wind barely touched the cave mouth. The sky hung between copper and lilac. Their timeline was edging toward bat flight hour, but they believed they still had a buffer. Sereth was precise and quiet, mapping kit on their back, disto, compass, water-resistant notebook, clipped and secured. Kael was strong and fond of improvising. He carried the heavy static rope and a bag of bolts. Melith, the team's medical technical lead, packed 2 backup lights, a small rescue pulley, several Prusix, and emergency masks. The plan was simple, but one detail slipped. They hadn't added extra buffer time to avoid the mass bat exodus. Worse, they left the spare escape masks in the truck, assuming they'd be out well before dark. They passed the entry corridor toward the Great Hall. Dust sparkled in their beams. Here and there, the sharp odor of guano stung the throat. Guano being the accumulated droppings of seabirds or bats. The first stretch felt easy. A hiss high in the ceiling. A stray draft along the wall. No one paused. They fixed a guideline and peeled off to map a side branch. Flowstone curled like a swallow's tail. Traces of an old stream etched the floor like overturned letters. Sereth read distances. The instrument chimed softly. Sereth logged each reading. Melith called the points back. Kael followed, tightening anchors and tending the lights. A faint pressure breeze pushed from the south. From a dark shaft rose a steady hum, swelling like a deep river's lullaby. Time's turning into an enemy, Melith murmured, half to themselves. Sunlight outside was fading fast. Inside, the bat colony was waking. At a narrow drop like a waterfall shaft, Sereth noticed fresh signs. Wet wall, new splashes of guano. We'll look a few meters and turn back, then exit the main trunk, Kael said. Keep the masks in the pack for now. The smell's manageable, Melith added. A small neglect, a great price. That choice became the heavy hinge of a door that would soon swing shut. They fixed the rope at the lip with a double knot. Sereth would go first. Would you leave the comfort of home to explore a cave this thick with bats? The drop looked short, 6 or 7 meters between levels. Kael belayed. Melith set a backup line to a horn of rock. Then the cave's other clock struck. Thousands of bats lifted. Calendar, sun, biology. One alarm. They poured through a corridor like a flight tunnel. Air surged. Dust and guano billowed. Lenses fogged in seconds. Beams shortened. Shadows tangled. Visibility fell to 0. Panic breathing ate the air. Sereth descended, following the line, feeling for a foothold. The rope, slick with dust, turned the glove to glass. A pebble broke loose. One blink of inattention. A crumbly edge gave way. Sereth slipped from the lip. "I'm falling!" The water took the voice. Then darkness. Kael locked the rope on reflex, but the dusty knot slipped. A heartbeat of free fall. Sereth hit the churning pool below. The echo rolled twice. Light died. Silence. Then a roar. "Sereth!" Melith called. Something answered, thin and directionless. Another wave of bats burst from the corridor. The air heaved again. Guano spray turned the glass of Kael's headlamp opaque. He lifted a hand to wipe it, and the toe of his boot slid into a vise between rocks. When he set weight, the sole jammed and gripped his ankle like iron. He cursed, then forced himself still. "My foot's stuck," he said, voice shaking but not broken. Melith pulled the team back to rope discipline. Prusix out, a short line to Kael's harness, a quick 3-to-1 haul to unweight the trap, inch by inch. Inch by inch method. Calm, Melith breathed. The guideline was their only cord to the surface. To free Kaidor's foot, Melith loosened the boot, set aid steps, lifted with the mini pulley to ease the pinch, then levered a carabiner to pry a hairline gap. It didn't pop. It resisted, then released with a gritty rasp. Kaidor was free, but his ankle throbbed hot. From below, Sereth's voice rose as a threat. Melith decided, stage Kaidor on the backup line at a safer nook, then descend to Sereth. If that failed, run for help. Time pressed hard. The bat rush was thinning, but the dust hung heavy, scraping lungs with every breath. Melith handed Kaidor a mask. Wear this. Stay put. Don't move. Kaidor wanted to argue, but his breathing told the truth. Melith checked the rope, set a small protector on a rub point, locked the descender, and slid toward the rumble. At the bottom, the shaft opened to a tight pool. Water jetted from within, hit the wall, turned to mist. The mist clung to guano dust and fell back as a heavier. Swirl Sereth hung in the chest harness, feet almost touching water. Consciousness flickered. Melith eased them onto a ledge, gently stabilized the head. Don't point your light at me. It'll hurt your eyes. A cut on the forehead bled. Worse, the breathing was short and uneven, as if the bellows had lost their air. There was no time for extended care. Melith clipped Sereth into the system and raised them a meter or two out of the spray. A foil blanket. I'm going up for help. You won't fall. Wait. Sereth's eyes closed and opened. Understanding, or just a reflex. The climb back was harsher than the descent. Each move fought the clock. Drips from the ceiling ticked like an hourglass. Melith straightened the direction flags on the guideline, clear and two-sided. Deep breath, steady cadence. Climb, crawl, walk. Knees kiss stone in tight spots. In the big rooms, solitude's wind brushed their hair. Night seeped inward with a cool whisper. At last, the surface. The sky was black. Stars stared through a thin veil. Melith ran to the ranger's hut. The first words came as a rasp, then formed. 2 inside. 1 fall, 1 foot entrapment. Coordinates marked. Line is rigged. Time is short. The alarm went out. Local teams and volunteer cave rescuers converged. They carried medical kits, heat packs, portable oxygen, full face masks, longer ropes, steel anchors, a comms line. Rescue is always slower underground. Tight passages, rope logistics, thin communication. Even so, the team moved methodically. They reached Sereth. The pulse was thread thin. Was that a faint smile, or only the light? Hard to tell. The medics opened the airway, fed oxygen, packaged carefully. Relay stations were rigged to haul a quarter mile up the shaft. Time is an enemy was no longer a phrase. It was a weight on every back. Kaidor came out first. On the surface, he gripped Melith's hand. I made it, he breathed, then, teeth clenched. Sereth. We're bringing them too, Melith said, half a promise, half a prayer. Sereth's haul moved quickly, then slowed. At one relay, rope friction spiked and the system was rebuilt. Elsewhere, the gap for the stretcher was widened millimeter by millimeter with a chisel. The guideline is the only cord to the surface, Melith thought. Never stray from it, but don't let it strangle you. At the upper level, Sereth's breathing wavered again. Interventions continued. In the last 50 meters, a star streaked across the sky. Omen or dust, it didn't matter. They reached the exit well past midnight. Cold air burned lungs and felt like a clean page. Kaidor went into the ambulance. Soft tissue damage, likely a fracture, but conscious and stable. For Sereth, there was a long hush. Then a line on the monitor. Another. A rhythm wandering outside normal. Melith stood with helmet in hand, watching their shadows stretch long along the wall. By morning, the report was brief and heavy. Fall trauma and hypoxia, despite all efforts. The mouth of that shaft now held a new word in their lexicon. Loss. The cave was quiet. People whisper inside. The rocks listen. Sometimes, the rocks answer. Remember 3 things. Respect large colonies' exit times. Build buffer. In guano and dust-laden places, respiratory protection and gas monitoring are not luxuries. They are standard. Spare masks and meters must be on every body within reach. And hold the line. Guideline discipline, two-sided direction flags, and the rule. We enter together, we leave together. When visibility hits zero, when panic burns air, when every inch turns into a battle, those rules keep you tied to the surface. A small neglect can demand a great price. If you ever plan to go below, sit first in the light above and ask, did I plan time as an ally or sign it over to the dark?